Hello, today we will cover some multiple choice questions appearing frequently in competitive exams from the chapter Units and Measurements. So across the 20 different questions that I'll be covering in this video, I have picked up those questions that tend to confuse students, and some of the questions are of the sort wherein the approach that you take will matter in terms of the time you take to complete the question. So we will cover some of these strategies that you can possibly use while tackling these multiple choice questions. So let's move on to the first question. Physical quantities are option A, quantities such as degrees, radians and steradians. Option B, quantities such as length, mass, time, electric current, thermodynamic temperature, amount of substance and luminous intensity. C, quantities such as pounds, dollars and rupees. And D, quantities such as kilos, pounds and gallons. So if you go back and read the question carefully one more time, what he has asked is physical quantities. Remember, there is a difference between physical quantities and units of physical quantities or physical units. So in the first option, degrees, radians and steradians, they are all units to measure angle or solid angle. In question option C, pounds, dollars and rupees, all these are currencies, and obviously that's a choice that has to be eliminated first time. And finally you have kilos, pounds and gallons to measure mass in the first two cases, and gallons is to measure volume. But again, these are physical units, so obviously the choice is option B. Question 2, dimensions of energy is, and there are 4 options given. Now suppose you know the dimensions for energy by memory, then it's a straightforward choice and you go ahead to the next question. But even if you do not remember it out of the blue, you can always derive it by using any of the formulae for energy. So let's use the formula E equals mc square to arrive at the dimensions of energy. So on the right hand side, m has dimensions capital M, which is mass, and c stands for the speed of light and its unit is meters per second. So the dimensions will be L t to the power minus 1 whole raised to the power 2. Simplify that and you will arrive at m L square t to the power minus 2, which is option number A. Even if you want to use a different formula, say the one for kinetic energy, which is equal to half mv square, or you want to use the formula for potential energy, which is mass into acceleration due to gravity into height, mgh. You can arrive at the dimensions of energy using either of these two formulae too, and you'll still arrive at the same answer. So we arrive at the option which is A, m L square t to the power minus 2. Another approach that you could also take for this question is the approach of elimination. So obviously when you see E equals mc square, you'll have to realize that the maximum power of any of the dimensional quantities can be only 2. So obviously option number D is not the correct option. So this automatically gets eliminated. You can also eliminate option C, because if you take any of the formula, mass has only been raised to the power 1. So m has been raised to the power 2 here in option C. So option C2 is obviously the wrong choice. And now you are left with only two choices, m, l, t to the power minus 1 and the first choice. Now again, if you just see the quantity of speed of light has the unit meters per second, and the whole thing has been raised to power 2. So obviously option B2 is wrong. So without doing any calculations 2, you can come to a conclusion that option A must be the right one. But if you can do this quickly, then this might be an easy way by using the formulae to arrive at the dimensions. Question 3. Two resistances R1 equal to 300 plus or minus 3 ohms and R2 equal to 200 plus or minus 4 ohms are connected in series. What is the equivalent resistance? So while the question is straightforward, what you are being tested on is your knowledge of how to deal with absolute errors. Right? Resistance 1 has a value of 300 ohms with a variation of plus or minus 3 ohms. Similarly, resistance 2 has a value of 200 ohms with a variation of plus or minus 4 ohms. So obviously when you find the equivalent resistance, so we know that the equivalent resistance in the case of resistances being connected in series will be the sum of the individual resistances, right? So it's R1 plus R2. So obviously the first thing that you need to do is add up the values of the resistances by ignoring the errors. So it's 300 in the case of resistance 1 and 200 in the case of resistance 2. So obviously your final equivalent resistance value will be 500 plus or minus something. So obviously using this much of information, you can right away eliminate option A and option D. So both these stand eliminated. Now you only have to choose between B and C. Now you need to go back and recollect that whenever we add or subtract two values, the way we deal with the absolute errors is to add them. Irrespective of whether you add the two quantities or subtract the two quantities, the absolute errors are always added. So 3 ohms plus 4 ohms. So obviously the final value will be 7 as the absolute error associated with the equivalent resistance. So 500 plus or minus 7 ohms. So obviously option B stands eliminated and option C is the right answer. Question 4. A force F is given by F equals AT plus BT square, where T is time. What are the dimensions of A and B? So now the concept that we'll have to use here is that whenever two quantities are added on the right hand side to give a single quantity on the left hand side. So two quantities on the right hand side are AT and BT square. These are added to give a single quantity force on the left hand side. One concept that you'll have to remember is that the dimension of F should be individually equal to the dimension of AT, and the dimension of F should be individually equal to the dimension of BT square. So using this concept, we can arrive at the dimension of A and B. Now let's first calculate the dimensions of force. So force, you might recall, is given by the formula mass into acceleration. So obviously if you take the units of mass and acceleration, it is kg and meters per second square. So using that concept, I can arrive at the dimension of force as m L t to the power minus 2. Now this dimension of m L t to the power minus 2 should be individually equal to the dimensions of AT. So let's first equate that to the dimensions of AT. So on the left hand side I have m L t to the power minus 2, which should be equal to, we don't know the dimension of A, so we'll leave it as it is, and the dimension of T is T. So I keep A on one side and I take the dimension T to the other side. So what I get is m L t to the power minus 2 by T. So when I simplify that, I get m L t to the power minus 3. So this is the dimension of A. So obviously if you go back and look at the choices, now obviously you can eliminate choice A and you can eliminate choice C. But there are two choices, B and D, that have the same answer, ml t to the power minus 3. So you are forced to calculate the dimensions of B2. So you will have to eliminate between B and D. So let's again do that by repeating the steps for calculating B. So now m L t to the power minus 2 equals bt square. So b on one side and on the other side I get m L t to the power minus 2, and this t square dimension comes to the denominator. So when I raise this to the power, it gives me m L t to the power minus 4. So obviously now the only choice left with both answers correct is option D. Question 5. In a system of units, if force represented by capital F, acceleration capital A and time capital T are taken as fundamental units, then the dimensional formula of energy is, and they are given you 4 choices. So how do you approach this? You need to calculate the dimensions of energy in terms of these 3 symbols, F, A and T. So obviously the starting point should be a formula where you have energy on the left hand side. So let's look at the formula for potential energy. You can take any formula for that matter, but I'll demonstrate using the one for potential energy. So potential energy, we said, is equal to mgh, where m is mass, g is acceleration due to gravity, and h is height above the ground. So E equals, so now you can recall that mass into g or m into g is nothing but force. Force is mass into acceleration. So m into g I can replace it with F, and h is nothing but displacement or distance. So I can put it as S. So you can recall that the right hand side now is also representative of the formula for work done. Right? Work done is nothing but energy. So now when I go to the next step, I've got one of the units, that is force. So I'll replace that with the dimension F as indicated in the question. Now I'm left with displacement. So displacement or distance can be replaced with the formula. So distance is speed into time. So I'll replace it with V for velocity or speed into time. So now I have got my second dimensional value, that is F I have got and T I have just got. Now I have to replace V, velocity, with acceleration. So what is velocity? So velocity is another representation of acceleration, because you can represent acceleration as velocity per time. So acceleration equals velocity per time, right? So I can replace V as acceleration into time. Acceleration into time. So obviously now the formula on the right hand side becomes F. V I replace with A and T. A is acceleration and T is capital T, and there's one more T as per the question, as per what I've derived so far. So this becomes F A T square, which is obviously option number B. Question 6. This is a question on assertion and reason. This is one of the most common type of questions that you find in competitive exams. So over here they give you two things: one, an assertion; two, a reason that is supposed to support the assertion. And obviously the four choices will be a combination of what is true and what is false. So let's go through the question. Assertion: the concept of energy is central to physics, and expression for energy can be written for every physical system. So that's the assertion. It simply states that the concept of energy is central to physics, which is true, and expression of energy can be written for every physical system, which too is true. Now the reason he gives for this to be true, for the assertion to be true, is law of conservation of energy is not valid for all forces. Now the very first part of the statement seems suspicious, because if concept of energy is central to physics and it can be written for every physical system, then law of conservation of energy should be valid for all forces. So the reason at the very start is wrong. Let's check out the second part: and for any kind of transformation between different forms of energy. So obviously that's a connected concept. So obviously you see that the reason is not right. So you'll have to look for a choice among the four choices where it says the assertion is true, but the reason to support the assertion is not correctly framed. So let's look at the four choices. Option A, assertion is correct, reason is incorrect. So that seems to be our answer. Let's check out the other ones. In such questions, please check out all the four options before you home in on the correct one. Option B, assertion is correct, reason is correct, but reason is not a correct explanation for assertion. Obviously B is wrong because reason itself is incorrect, right? Option C, assertion is correct, reason is correct, and reason is a correct explanation for assertion. That's obviously wrong too, because we already have come to the conclusion that reason is wrong. Finally, assertion is incorrect. So there itself you can eliminate choice D. So obviously the answer is option A. Question 7. The scientific principle involved in production of ultra high magnetic fields is digital logic, superconductivity, photoelectric effect, laws of thermodynamics. So this is more of a general knowledge question, and if you have been following the news of late, there has been a lot of activity around trying to generate ultra high magnetic fields. Our limitation with generating high energy magnetic fields is due to the properties of the ferromagnetic materials that we use and the diamagnetism or the paramagnetism that they project. But using superconductivity, which is the branch of physics that deals with the way metals conduct electricity at extremely low temperatures, that field has allowed us to build magnetic fields of extremely high value. So superconductivity is the scientific principle behind ultra high magnetic fields. So in fact, at one stage Japan was also experimenting with this particular scientific principle to achieve totally frictionless trains. So answer is superconductivity. Question 8. Match column 1 and column 2. So match the following questions, though less frequent, are sometimes added in competitive exams because they increase the amount of time for you to digest the facts given before you can arrive at the right choice. But anyway, it also comes with the advantage that if you get one or two matches right, probably you are much closer to eliminating the other options. So let's try this out. Column 1 has the name of scientists and column 2 has a list of their contributions to this field of physics. So let's start with something that stands out in column A. Column A, the choices A, B, C are all people who have contributed in the area of astrophysics, whereas the last one, Ernest Rutherford, is associated with the atom. This is basic knowledge that we have all learned. So obviously in column 2, what is that related with the atom? The very first choice is that related with the atom, nuclear model of atom. So obviously D goes with 1. So go to the choices. Which of the options have D associated with 1? So it is option A and option D. Option B and C can straight away be eliminated. So now you have to only worry about option A and option D. Now you can start checking with the first one. Option A has A associated with 2. That is Johannes Kepler, it says, is associated with planetary motion. Whereas D says Johannes Kepler is associated with option 3, elliptical orbit theory. Now, if you are well aware of the facts, this becomes straightforward. But if you are not aware of the facts, try comparing the second choice. You have B associated with 4 in option A, which is Tycho Brahe being associated with circular orbit theory. Whereas here in option D, Tycho Brahe has been associated with planetary motion. Again, if you are aware of the facts, this becomes straightforward. Else you can compare option, the choice of C. So in option A, C, Nicholas Copernicus has been associated with elliptical orbit theory. Here, Nicholas Copernicus has been associated with circular orbit theory. Now you might recollect, if you really do not know or if you are clueless at this point, at least you should be able to recall that Copernicus was a scientist in the medieval century, whereas Tycho Brahe was known for his contribution in the 19th century. So Copernicus obviously was the first to put the heliocentric theory first, with the sun at the center of the universe, the known universe. So he would have obviously put circular orbit theory as the choice, whereas it was much later wherein Tycho Brahe and then his student Johannes Kepler, who advanced our knowledge of the orbits of the planet by putting forth the planetary motion and the elliptical orbit theory, right? So obviously Copernicus should be associated with what was known in the medieval years, that is circular orbit theory. So C goes well with 4. So where C goes well with 4 is option D. So this is how you can approach match the following questions, which means in the question given, A is 3, which is Johannes Kepler put forth the elliptical orbit theory based on Tycho Brahe's observations. B is 2, Tycho Brahe was the one who proposed a planetary motion. C is Copernicus, who put forth circular orbit theory, and D obviously is nuclear model of the atom. So the answer is option D. Question 8. Match column 1 and column 2. So match the following questions are typically given in competitive exams because one, they ensure that the candidate is forced to take some time off to go through the different choices and the options given to make sure he marks the correct one. So it's basically a question that's put in so that it consumes the candidate's time. But nevertheless, sometimes the options can be studied to eliminate the false options and we can close down on the right choice. So let's look at this particular question. So on the left hand side you have scientists who have contributed to the field of physics, and on the right side are listed their contributions. If you observe carefully, in the column 2, 3 of the options, that's planetary motion, elliptical orbit theory and circular orbit theory, they are all related to the field of astrophysics, whereas the first option, that's in column 2, is nuclear model of an atom. So nuclear model of an atom obviously should remind you of Ernest Rutherford. So Ernest Rutherford directly has contributed to the nuclear model of the atom. So obviously here D is related to 1. So based on that, you can straight away eliminate option B and option C. You are left with option A and option D, where D is linked to 1. So one among these should be the right answer. Now how do we eliminate the other one? Let's start with, if you just look at again these 3 scientists, Copernicus is the scientist who was known for his research in the medieval period, and then comes Tycho Brahe and then his student Johannes Kepler. So Copernicus obviously would have done research in some initial sphere of astrophysics. So the 3 options here that you have is planetary motion, elliptical orbit theory and circular orbit theory. So it was Copernicus who first said that Sun is the center of the known universe and not Earth. He discarded the geocentric theory and said that Sun and not Earth is the center of the known universe. And obviously when he drew his theory in the form of a diagram, he put circular orbits. So Copernicus worked with the circular orbit theory. So C goes with 4. So among option A and D, C goes with 4 in option D. So obviously option D is the answer to this question. Question 9. Which of the following quantities is dimensionless? So let's recall that dimensionless quantities are typically ratios or trigonometric values. So let's go on eliminating each one of these. Gravitational constant. So if gravitational constant is the capital G that you get in Newton's universal law of gravitation. So force experienced, the gravitational force experienced between any 2 objects is given by capital G and the product of the masses of the 2 objects divided by the square of the distance between them. So if I were to retain G on one side and take all the other quantities to the other side, obviously we'll find out that G has dimension. Similarly, Planck's constant. In the chapter dual nature of radiation and matter that you will be studying later on, you have an equation E equals h into frequency, where E is the energy that is absorbed or emitted, and when a photon is absorbed or emitted by an electron that jumps between orbits, and the energy is associated with the frequency of the emitted radiation. So again, if I keep Planck's constant on one side, here on the other side you have energy divided by frequency. Again, Planck's constant has dimension. Finally, power of a convex lens. So power is defined as the reciprocal of the focal length of a convex lens. So focal length obviously is measured in meters. So the reciprocal has a unit called diopter. So obviously C also has dimension. So obvious choice here is none of these. Question 10. Parsec is a unit of time, speed, distance, mass. So again, you will recall that when it comes to measuring extremely large distances which we encounter in space, we typically go with units like parsec, light year or astronomical unit, because they are much more convenient to state the quantities. So parsec is basically the distance from an object that subtends a parallax of 1 second as measured from Earth and the Sun, which means to say that if we have one reference point as Earth and one reference point as the Sun, then the angle subtended by the distant object at these 2 points will be 1 second. Such a distance is known as 1 parsec. So obviously it's a measurement of distance. So choice is C. Question 11. Meter as per the SI definition is based on option A, distance travelled by light in a second, option B, distance travelled by sound in a second, C, distance covered by Earth while orbiting the Sun. None of these. So again, if you recall, we divide the distance travelled by light in a second, which is about 3 lakh kilometers per second. We divide it by approximately 3 into 10 to the power of 8, a number that's close to 3 into 10 to the power of 8, and whatever is the answer we get, that is defined to be 1 meter as per the standard international system of units. So obviously the definition of meter is based on the distance travelled by light in a second. Question 12. The multiplication of 10.430 with 0.910 up to correct number of significant figures is your 4 choices. You'll recall again that when we multiply, the answer is supposed to have as many significant figures as the number in the question with the least number of significant figures. So one of the numbers here is 10.430, which has 5 significant figures, whereas the other one has 3 significant figures. So obviously we need to retain 3 significant figures in the answer, and hence the choice is C, which is 9.49. Question 13. The error in measurement of the side of a cube is 1%. The error in measurement of its volume will be 1, 2, 3 or 4%. So you'll recall that volume of a cube is the cube of the side. So therefore the percentage error in volume is 3 times, which is the exponent 3, into the percentage error in measuring the site. So obviously it is 3 into 1%, which is 3%. So answer is option C, 3%. Question 40. The force F equals ma, where m mass equals 20 plus or minus 2 kgs and a acceleration equals 100 plus or minus 5 meters per second square. The percentage error in F is 5%, 7%, 15%, 3%. So you can see that to calculate force, we are multiplying the two quantities, mass and acceleration. So obviously the measured quantities are multiplied. So 20 into 100. So obviously this is 2000, right? But that's not what is being asked. What is being asked is the percentage error in F. So we'll have to calculate the percentage error first in mass and then the percentage error in acceleration. And percentage errors are always added up. So let's calculate the percentage error in mass. So percentage error in mass is 2, which is the error, divided by 20, which is the value that's measured, into 100. So which is 10%. And percentage error in acceleration is 5, which is the error divided by 100 multiplied by 100. So which is 5%. So the total percentage error in force is, when the two quantities are multiplied, is the addition of the percentage errors. So it is 10 plus 5, which is 15%. So the answer is option C, 15%. Question 15. The least count of a watch without a second's needle is 1 second, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 1 hour. So let's go back to the definition of least count. So least count of any instrument is the smallest measurement that you can take with that instrument accurately. So the smallest measurement that you can take with a watch with the seconds needle is 1 second, because you can measure a time of 1 second. But a watch without a seconds needle, the least measurement you can take is 1 minute, because you can observe the movement of the minute's hand, and hence you can take a measurement of 1 minute. So which means the answer for the least count is 1 minute. But among the choices, you don't have 1 minute. What you have is option C, which is the closest to the answer that we need, and hence the answer is 60 seconds. Question 16. Atomic clocks are based on the element rubidium, boron, plutonium, cesium. The Standard International System of Units Bureau measures the second on the atomic clocks which are based on cesium. Hence the answer here is cesium. Question 17. Astronomical unit is the distance between Earth and Moon, Earth and the Sun, Sun and the edge of the solar system, none of these. So again, it's a fact-based question, and you will need to recall that it's the distance between the Earth and the Sun, the average distance between the Earth and the Sun, that's taken as one astronomical unit. It's one of the units used to measure extremely long distances that we encounter in space, in addition to parsec and the light year. Question 18. The SI symbol for measuring quantity of substance. So one among the 7 basic units is quantity of substance. But here the confusion that the question is trying to create in your mind is the symbol. So go back and read the question again. They're asking you the SI symbol. They're not asking you the SI unit. The SI unit is obviously mole, but what's the SI symbol? So in a hurry, people usually put mole as the answer, which is the wrong one. What is the symbol used? The symbol used is MOL, which is the short form of MOLE. So the answer obviously is option B. Question 19. In the parallax system, dash is the distance between 2 points of observation. So when we measure a distant object, we measure it from 2 different points, and the distance between these 2 points, is it known as parallax, parallactic, basis, or site? Again, a fact-based question based on inputs from your textbook. So the answer is basis. So in a parallax system, basis is the distance between 2 points of observation. Question 20. Powers of 10 power minus 15 are referred to by the prefix of Fermi, angstrom, pico, giga. So obviously you will be able to quickly eliminate giga, because giga measures positive powers, whereas pico, angstrom and Fermi, they measure negative powers. So pico measures 10 to the power of minus 12, angstrom 10 to the power of minus 10, and while Fermi stands for 10 power minus 50. So the answer is option A. So these 20 questions, I hope, helped you get a fair idea of the kind of questions that you can encounter in competitive exams. So I suggest that you look out for more such questions on the internet or through reference books and practice some of these question formats that are commonly seen in competitive exams.